You've probably read the Bible a lot. You've heard tales of enormous miracles and heroic deeds. However, one chapter is superior to the others, frequently referred to as the Hall of Faith. It is Hebrews 11. Why is this particular chapter regarded by so many as the most significant one in the Bible? This is due to the fact that this chapter offers more than just instructions. It explains how to use God's power.
It makes visible the pulse that keeps the Christian life going. Religion is nothing more than a set of meaningless rules without the truth presented in this chapter. However, the truth discovered here transforms common people into irresistible forces for God's kingdom. We must examine the beginning of this chapter in order to comprehend why it transforms everything. The author doesn't begin with a proposal. He begins by providing a definition. He informs us just what this enigmatic energy called faith actually is. Now, faith is assurance about what we cannot see and confidence in what we hope for. This isn't wishful thinking. The world tells you that having faith is shutting your eyes and wishing for the best. The Bible states the exact opposite. Biblical faith is assurance. It is a firm understanding. It is the capacity to treat future events as though they have already occurred. It is trusting that a promise made by God is more real than the earth you are standing on. To illustrate this concept, the author takes us back to the beginning of time. There was only God before there were people and stars. By faith, we comprehend that the universe was created at God's will, meaning that what is visible was not created from what was visible. Everything you can see and touch was created from nothing. It was created by God's unseen word. The remainder of the chapter is put in motion by this. If God can build a cosmos from nothing, certainly He can make a miracle in your life when you have nothing left. A list of witnesses makes up the remainder of this chapter. These individuals who've shown how this unseen force functions in the actual world. Two brothers are at the beginning of the history of faith. Cain and Abel were the names of the two. They both grew up in the same realm outside of Eden. They were both aware of God's identity. The Lord received gifts from each of them. However, just one was approved. This tale shows us that faith and religious practice are not the same thing. You can attend church, perform music, and provide cash. However, it is meaningless if your heart lacks trust. Some of the products of the land were brought by Cain. Although it was a casual offering, Abel gave it his all. He brought the fat parts from some of his flock's firstborn. He didn't donate his leftovers to God. Because he believed that God was valuable, he gave God his all. Abel. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. When God praised his offerings, he was praised as righteous by faith. And despite his death, Abel continues to speak out of faith. Abel passed away at a young age. He was killed by his brother. But thousands of years later, his voice is still audible because of his faith. He tells us that God looks at the heart, not just the hands. The chronology then advances to a man by the name of Enoch. One of the Bible's most enigmatic characters is Enoch. The globe was getting more and more evil during the time he lived. People were losing sight of God. Everywhere there was an increase in violence. Enoch, however, took a different decision. He made the decision to follow God. He only occasionally prayed. It implies that he conversed with his Creator constantly throughout his existence. He was so near to God that the Lord was entirely pleased with him. Then a supernatural event took place. He completely avoided death. Enoch was snatched from this world by faith in order to spare him from death. God made it impossible to locate him, had removed him, because he was praised as someone who delighted God before to his capture. The golden rule of a connection with God is established in this parable and is something that every believer needs to commit to memory. Furthermore, it is difficult to please God without faith, as everybody who approaches Him needs to think that He exists and that those who really seek Him will be rewarded. Please, you can't.
God simply by being kind. Just abiding by the law won't satisfy Him. You have to think He's good and that He's real. You have to think He's a rewarder. You will eventually give up seeking God if you don't think He wants to bless you. The gloom on earth deepened as the generations went by. It
reached a point where God made the decision to start anew and purify the world. He had a conversation with a man called Noah. Because of the impending rain, God instructed Noah to construct a huge boat. However, you have to comprehend the context. It was perhaps the first time it had rained like that. The ocean was far away. Noah was not a skilled craftsman. He was merely a man who was able to hear the voice of God.
Just think of the mockery he endured for decades, possibly even 120 years. He was a woodcutter. He pounded on his nails. To seal the wood, he collected pitch. Every day his neighbors must have made fun of him. They most likely referred to him as insane. They questioned him about why he was constructing a massive watercraft on dry land. However, Noah ignored the throng. He paid attention to God. God's admonition was more important to him than what his neighbors thought. By faith, Noah constructed an ark to save his family after he was forewarned about things he had not yet seen. He became the heir of the righteousness that is consistent with faith and condemned the world because of his faith. Noah's family was saved by his faith. This is a tremendous lesson for every parent and every leader. Your faith protects those under your care. Since Noah thought his children had survived the deluge, the laughter ceased when the rain eventually began to pour. God Himself closed the ark's doors. Noah's faith was confirmed. He demonstrated that it is preferable to appear dumb to the outside world and be right with God than to be well liked by the outside world and be wrong with God. The focus of the chapter then switches to the guy who would go on to become the father of numerous countries. Abraham had security and led a comfortable life in an affluent city. He was a family man. He owned a house. However, God gave him a drastic directive. He was instructed by God to leave everything behind and travel to a place that He would later reveal. He was not given a map by God. He did not provide him with a timetable. He simply ordered, "Go." This is what faith is all about. Faith is obeying God even when you do not know the facts. By faith, Abraham was summoned to go to a land he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed, and went even though he did not know where he was going. Abraham prepared his tents. He assembled his flocks. He abducted his nephew Lot and his wife Sarah. They started to move toward the desert. Like a foreigner in a foreign land, he lived in tents. He never constructed a long-term metropolis for himself.